Today in this episode, we're talking about clarity, specifically the pressure that every pastor and ministry leader, church leader feels, but very few diagnose correctly. It's the pressure of unclear roles and responsibilities. Here's how this kind of usually plays out. You're leading a great team of people who love Jesus. Maybe they're volunteer leaders, elder board, or maybe you got some staff. And they're serving really well, and they want to make a difference. But things feel, probably the best word is chaotic. Things just feel chaotic. Meetings run long. You don't feel like you get much done. Communication breaks down. And then somehow, roles, tasks, responsibilities keep kind of slipping through the cracks. This is not a commitment issue. It's actually not even a people issue. It's really a clarity problem. Most churches, they operate with overlapping leadership, okay? And it's normal. We've got kind of a shared service programming team. Think about this, like just as an example, the people who put together a Sunday morning church service. There's a lot of shared overlap responsibilities. You've got two people maybe managing groups in your church, men and women, or however you've done that. Maybe you've got a communications kind of team, but there are three voices that speak into it. Maybe somebody's doing photo and video for you as a volunteer, and somebody's writing copy. And again, all of that can sound collaborative. And I'm a huge fan of collaboration, but collaboration without a lot of clarity leads to chaos. You want to write that down somewhere. Collaboration without clarity leads to chaos. Here's why. Because when more than one person, owns a ministry area, two very simple but easy things, accidental things can happen. Okay, the first one is that we end up having people, whether again, volunteer, staff, whatever it is, but a lot of times it's volunteers. They end up reporting to we, not a me, right? They end up feeling like they report to multiple people, not to a single person. And when direction is unclear, right, confusion replaces any level of confidence that they have. And the second thing that happens is that responsibility exists, but accountability remains absent, right? Task may get done, but outcomes get kind of unowned, if that's a word. And when those outcomes are not owned by someone, an individual, they rarely get improved, right? The outcome, the result may be okay, but the process and how you got there could be terrible. And great results are the combination of the process and the outcome, right? Not just the outcome. So if that's if that's when you, right, as a lead pastor or a ministry leader, whatever your role is, this is when you begin to feel some of that chaos the most, right? Because you end up carrying what maybe other people should own. And that's not like great leadership. That's just rescue mode. It's like survival. And you know this, it is exhausting. So practically, and you know this about me, I want to give you something very practical. There's an easy fix for this, and it's not complicated, but it does require, my favorite word, intentionality. It requires some intentionality. Here's what to do, just to be intentional. First thing, list every major ministry area in your church. Get a piece of paper, open up Evernote or whatever you use for note-taking, even a Word doc, a Google Doc, write it down, like every major area of ministry in your church, right? Think about KidMin, student ministry, church service programming, groups, care, communications, administration, whatever the things are that you have. Now, there's a lot, and you may be the only staff member, but there still are a lot of ministry areas, right? Now, once you've written them all down, here's what I would encourage you to do. Write a one-sentence job description for each of the areas that define three different things. So this job description, who's responsible for what? Who has authority to make decisions? Who's accountable for the outcomes? All right, who's responsible for that ministry area? Who has authority to decide? And who is accountable for the outcome, right? The result and the process. Now, those can just be bullets. And that one sentence job description is a very clear statement about the director of that ministry area. What are they called to do? In one sentence, what is their responsibility and what's the thing you're going to be holding them accountable to? When I was a leader at Woodstock City Church, when I was the lead pastor, I created this for myself. And then when we became a campus of North Point, we all of us lead pastors with Andy, got a one-sentence job description. And it was very simple. As a lead pastor, my one-sentence job description was to remove obstacles between people and our mission. That was it. To be an obstacle remover, if we really want to make it really short. My job was to, anytime I saw an obstacle between the people in our community and our mission to lead people into a growing relationship with Jesus, any obstacle was under my authority, responsibility, and accountability to remove it. That was my one-sentence job description. So imagine, just for a second, you have listed all of the ministry areas, and assuming, right, and we're going to get to this in a second, there's somebody responsible for each of those areas, even if it's just one person over kidmin, student ministry, whatever it may be. And now you've written a single sentence job description, and maybe you added a couple little bullet points about accountability, responsibility, authority. Now that you've got that in mind, the next thing you're going to do, because you've kind of built a job description almost in a way. It's very short, right? But it's very clear. Once you've done that, the next thing you're going to do is you're going to build an org chart. And you're going to put one name in every single box in that org chart. Now, just to start simply, make a box just for each of the ministry areas. And put a name in there. And it doesn't matter if they're paid staff or a volunteer. It doesn't matter. And it doesn't matter if your name is in more than one box. When I first took over at Woodstock City Church, my name was in more than one box. And what mattered is that everyone, though, knew, looking at the org chart, who owned what. I mean, let me kind of walk you through that at Woodstock City. Like when I took over, it was called Watermark Church back then. In November of 2008, we only had a couple of staff members. Now, we also only had $400 and maybe 250 or so people, 200 people on a Sunday. So, which by the way, is not that small of a church, but it was a dying church. It had been a lot larger in the previously. I was the third lead pastor in the first 3 years of the church. So again, there was just a lot of turmoil, a lot of change. And so, when I got there, we drew up an org chart and we listed all the things that were happening on Sunday. Kidmin, I listed them earlier, a lot of them, right? Kidmin, student ministry needed to happen. Programming our church services had to happen. Groups had to happen. Some type of care was being offered. I mean, so there was a lot of things. When we kind of drew the org chart up in those very early days, my name was in several places. Other people's names were in several places, right? I was the service programming director. I was the groups director. I was the lead pastor. In a weird way, I reported to myself on the org chart in a couple of different places. And no, if you're thinking, was it ideal? Of course it wasn't ideal to have your name in multiple boxes, but it was very clear. I knew what my job was, what my roles were. Everyone knew that about my role and about their role. Everyone knew exactly who to go to. That kind of clarity is really important. Now, over time, I began to put volunteers and then eventually staff into those boxes, removing my name from it, right? So eventually that org chart begins to have individual names that are not being, written in multiple boxes. And that's a wonderful thing, right? But even early on with many of our names in multiple boxes, it created great clarity, which is, again, so important. Like clarity, it's not like it doesn't require it to be perfect. It just requires some intentionality, right? And again, it's not going to stay the exact same way as that original org chart looked. I mean, eventually, when I left Woodstock City, we had 65 staff members, right? Probably 20 interns. We had a lot of people in different boxes and a much larger org chart. And it's kind of funny thinking back to how silly that first one was, but it gave us great clarity. Now, some of you are overachievers. If you really want to stretch this leadership muscle, I'd love for you to think about creating an org chart for your future church, not just where you currently are, but what would an org chart look if your church was 2x or 5x or 10x the current size? Maybe you would end up with 65 staff. How would that look if you were to kind of lay that out in an org chart? What's kind of fun about that, and by the way, we did this a year into my time at Woodstock City at Watermark, we did this. And the exercise of creating that much larger org chart, it forced us to think about delegation. I'll give you a great example. We had one person's name in Kidmin. That person was also over student ministry, although we had a person who ran it. But they were kind of like the reporting of it, right? The student person reported to the family ministry director, who also was the kids director. But kids was preschool and elementary. They were over both. So we divided it up as if it was multiple departments, because it kind of was. We also knew that if we were 10x our size, and we were 200, right? So 10x, we're 2,000 on a Sunday now. Now we're a mega church, which seemed crazy when you have 200 people to be thinking that way. However, it forced us to think, if we had 2,000 people, how many preschool kids would that probably be for us? And we began to lay out a staff and volunteer chart to support a church with that many preschool kids. Did the same thing for elementary. For middle and high school, do we have 2 pastors now, or do we still have 1? What does administration look like? Do we have an event, person to help with that? Again, it forces you to think bigger. And here's what's awesome. It allows you to begin to think about how you can start delegating to volunteers some of those responsibilities further down the org chart. It's an exercise in really enforced delegation, and it really can reveal what kind of leaders you need next as you begin to grow. So let me kind of wrap up with this, okay? Our roles, when our roles are clear, once our roles are clear, right, and our org chart is created, here's the next thing you got to do. Just stick with it for a minute, okay? Like pastors, they love to help, right? Which usually means stepping back into spaces that we've already delegated. Our name isn't in that box anymore. Our name isn't leading that ministry. Every time we step back in and step out of the boxes that our name is in into somebody else's, it's not positive. We disempower the leader, and we confuse everyone in the ministry, including ourselves. So listen, if you're listening to this and you're feeling that Sunday to Sunday leadership, and you're feeling that pressure from Sunday to Sunday, this is a great place to start. Just start here. Like, don't add another meeting, right? Don't rewrite your mission and vision again. Just grab a whiteboard, draw your org chart, and put a name in every box. And if you want to be an overachiever, draw it as if your church is 2, 3, 4, 5 times the size it is today. Start thinking bigger. And this is so important. Every thriving organization, including churches, run on clarity. Clarity is like the fuel for the engine. And so if everyone is responsible, no one is. And when no one person is responsible for a ministry area, that pressure just gets stronger and weightier. It definitely doesn't leave. Hey, if this kind of idea resonates with you, I wrote about this and talked a lot more about it on the blog, gavinadams.com. Just look for the blog. I also offer leadership labs. These are paid, but they're deep dive courses on specific areas like church leadership. I also offer free 1-hour conversations every month that I call ministry strategy sessions, where we tackle one topic. And if this topic was helpful, maybe one day we can tackle this. Just let me know. So shoot me an email or contact me on the site, gavinadams.com. I'd love to help you bring some clarity to your structure, because if you have clarity, you'll remove the chaos. And when that happens, oh my goodness, your church's mission starts being maximized. And your mission's too important for it not to be.